Well, that's of course the $100 billion question. The Europeans do have access to funds. They can unfreeze the Russian assets that were frozen after the full frontal invasion in 2022 of Ukraine, and then take that money and purchase weapons for Ukraine. The problem, of course, is that production will need to be ramped up in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians have been quite good at doing this. So in their own defense industry, we've seen rapid expansion. But the European defense industry is very small right now in terms of its production ability. And frankly, our American defense industry is also very slow. So money isn't only part of the problem. Production and providing the weapons to the battlefield will take longer. But the Russians have their own challenges, and if we can keep the Chinese and others from fully joining Russia, we know they're already providing some support, and the Ukrainians recently have alleged that the Chinese are even providing some military support now, which would be cause for serious alarm and potential sanction by the United States and the Europeans. But I guess the short answer to your question is we can provide support to Ukraine for them to continue fighting. Whether it's enough for them to prevail in the short run remains to be seen, because, of course, it depends on what happens with regard to Russia. Well, rhetorically, we've had a case of whiplash because, of course, under the Biden administration, we were very clearly on the side of the victim, very clearly supporting Ukraine. And even though that assistance, military assistance in particular, was slow and sometimes hampered by the rules that the Biden administration put on the provision of that assistance, we were clearly on the side of the Ukrainians. We clearly did not want Ukraine to be conquered by Russia. We wanted to see justice prevail. We wanted to support, stand up for the international order. We wanted to prevent Vladimir Putin from turning and taking other countries, because I haven't mentioned that, but that's also what's at stake here, because he said he has a neo-imperial objective in mind. He wants to recreate the former Soviet Union or even the former Russian Empire and exert influence over all the Eastern European states, if not Western Europe. So Vladimir Putin needs to be stopped. And what is disturbing right now is we're not hearing the same level of understanding rhetorically coming from the Trump administration with regard to the threat that the Russian foreign policy poses to the international order. And of course, we have seen this administration be willing to stop military assistance to Ukraine during the negotiations, which of course is quite harmful to Ukraine's position and caused a loss of life. So in addition to that, of course, they halted intelligence assistance, which is just as bad, if not more detrimental to Ukraine. These things were turned back on, but we have created an impression that we're not as reliable an ally, and that in this negotiation context, we might be willing to throw our weight to Russia. So there's a great deal of uncertainty and nervousness among the Ukrainians, but also the Europeans, because as I mentioned, they are the next in line to be targeted by Vladimir Putin. Unfortunately, our handling of this conflict has caused damage. Whether it's only short-term or actually long-term damage remains to be seen. Of course, it remains to be seen based on how we decide to proceed, how the U.S. government moves on, how much support we provide Ukraine. If we continue to stay with Ukraine, then I think our relationship with our European allies will be strained, but it will not be in a crisis mode. If we, for some bad reason, decide not to support Ukraine and the Ukrainians, then we will have arrived at a crisis, and our alliance with Europe, the only operational military alliance, the NATO alliance, will be in question. And I believe that we will be then on a path to global war, because it is our alliance that has kept the United States and Europe out of a major war with Russia, with China, and the world out of another global war for the last 80 plus years. And so it's really important that we stay the course. No, because the aid that we're providing Ukraine is incredibly small compared to our overall budget, and it's a down payment on keeping us out of global war. So it's a small amount that you are paying to keep Vladimir Putin from attacking the rest of Europe and deeply impacting US interests. And make no mistake, if Vladimir Putin has his way in Europe, he's not going to just leave us alone. He has designs on the Arctic. They've made noises out of the Kremlin about Alaska. This man is an imperialist. He's not going to stop and say, "Oh, I like the Trump administration, so I'm not going to further challenge and try to erode America's democracy." So this is existential for us, and it's pennies on the dollar, the amount of assistance we're giving Ukraine. And I should also note that the Europeans have provided far more assistance than we have. So there's been this mistaken idea that the Europeans haven't. I think the split is something like 60-40, 60% European overall support and 40% American. It may have gone up even more now in favor of the Europeans. Regardless, this is a good investment and something that we can do at low cost. And let's not forget that Ukraine's always been the breadbasket, quote unquote, of Europe. It continues to be the breadbasket, frankly, of the world. When we had an embargo, that North African, Middle Eastern countries suffered the most. So Ukraine is important for the world economy, and a Ukraine with a big military defense complex is also an asset to NATO. So nothing bad will come out of Ukraine prevailing, except, frankly, a good NATO ally and the Russian government focusing on their internal challenges and hopefully a better life at some point for the people of Russia.